Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 275. This time on the podcast, Jen discusses maximizing your network. One of my favorite approaches to maximizing my network is adding total strangers to my LinkedIn connections. That way, if someone I know approaches me about making a connection with someone I don't know, but say I know, I can make that introduction confidently knowing that the worst thing that could possibly come out of it is the complete undermining of my credibility.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm your host, Jen Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jen is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to CareersbyJenn.com and click on Support to learn more. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you have tuned in today from wherever you are at whatever time of day or night you're listening. In this episode, we are talking about maximizing your network. But before we get into that, I have a couple of things to share. If you would like to support this show, you can do so by becoming a patron, which is done through a program called Patreon. I know it mentions that at the beginning, but what that is a platform that allows people to support shows and things that people are creating. And so what it is that for as little as $1 a month, you can subscribe and become a patron of the show, which gets you a shout out on the show. And it also gets you some exclusive content. And what it does is it helps to support the work that I'm doing in putting out the podcast each week. Almost each week. I didn't do last week because I had another exciting thing that I'm busy doing that I'll tell you about in a minute. Anyhow, there are video versions of the most recent guest podcasts. So if you want to see the person who I'm interviewing and see me interviewing them, then those are in the Patreon behind the Patreon wall. When you become a patron, you get to see those. And there are some other perks there too, depending on what level of support you are interested in offering. And the show is always free here. There's absolutely no obligation to do this. But if you want to and you are able to, I would highly appreciate it. The other exciting thing that is going on is that in the last few months, I have become part of an app launch that is happening sometime in the middle of this month, November, and then the beginning of December. So I think iOS is coming out first and Android is beginning of December. And it's called Huddle Journeys, Huddol Journeys. This is an app that is going to offer 7-day transformational journeys, somewhat like courses that you can take that promote self-growth. And so I've been working hard on one, and my particular journey is called Overwhelmed, Take Back Your Life and Thrive. And it will be part of the first release. And as the weeks and months go on, more and more content will be added. I think we are launching with 12 journeys, and there are coaches and transformational leaders, a whole bunch of different ones who are working on journeys right now that will be offered. And to begin with, I think some of the journeys include things like resilience and purpose and conscious parenting and conflict in relationships. And there's one called the comparison cure, about how we compare ourselves to other people all the time, and so much more. And so you get a little bit of content each day for 7 days as you sign up to go on these journeys. Anyhow, if you're interested, there is a link in my Instagram bio and also on the Careers by Jen Facebook page where you can add your name to get early access and if there's room, be a beta tester for the rest of 2020. So if you're interested in that, go over to my Instagram and look in the link in my bio and also on the Careers by Jen Facebook page. And if you are interested, you can join there. Our own Scary Voice scary dude intro voice guy, also known as my husband Scott, who does the intros for this show, is going to be also taking part in this. His journey is not ready yet. He's been very busy doing a number of other things, but he will have a journey on burnout coming out probably in early 2021. So we'll keep you apprised of that. It's very exciting stuff, and I look forward to working with people who sign up for these journeys, and working on more journeys, I hope, in the future. So there you go. All right, this podcast you're listening to right now is recorded on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Matsqui, the Kwantlen, the Katzie, the Semiahmoo, and the Stolo First Nations people. And for that, I am grateful. So my friend, today I am talking about maximizing your network. Whether you are in a job search or not, but particularly if you are in a job search or you're wanting to change careers in the future, or even if you're just thinking about what you might do next. So let's begin today with what your network even is. And I want to give it a high level look. Sometimes it takes sitting down with a blank piece of paper or a virtual page on your laptop or device to just begin to list out all the groups of people that you have in your circles or that you are in circles with. So not necessarily individual names. We're going to get to that next, but I suggest starting with groups of people. So committees, organizations, etc. And so what work groups are you part of if you are currently working? Are you on committees? Are there associations that you belong to? Are you in a union? Are there task groups for different things? What kinds of groups? Maybe you're part of industry groups or organizations associated with the industry that you work in. So what groups associated with your work that you're doing right now are you part of? And write all of those down. Think about in-person groups, but also think about virtual ones. And I mean, I know a lot of things are done virtually right now, but in the past. Also, are you part of any industry-related groups in the virtual world on LinkedIn or on Facebook? Because you can write those down as well. Even if you don't know people in these groups, are you part of an industry-related group for the industry that you happen to be in already? So then when you have and maybe you've already joined groups for the industry you want to move into, and you could write those down as well. That would be really exciting and important to include. And so that's sort of at the high level, and you might surprise yourself at all these organizations that you are already part of, groups of people that are related to your work. And then when we've listed all of that out, move to your own social groups. We'll get to family last, but what friend groups or community groups or volunteer groups are you in right now? Are you part of a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a religious organization? Are you part of a book club or a political organization? Or are you running, or maybe a running club or some other kind of community group that you might be part of? Do you volunteer at a food bank or the thrift store or at a shelter? Like what groups are you part of? I know that I am part of quite a few Facebook groups, everything from a zero waste group to a beginner minimalist group, which is kind of funny, but I'm working on it, to a gardening group, to a fitness group. I'm in several Facebook groups, and some of them I'm quite active in, and some of them I am not. But they count. So if you're in any of those kinds of groups that you contribute to, I'm in a podcast, I'm in a few podcasting groups actually, put those down because they count as well. So now we're going to move from those social community volunteer activity groups to your close personal contacts, as in your family, your relatives, your besties, people whom you know personally and who would naturally be willing to help you if you ask them. So we're going to move to those people. So by now, hopefully you've got quite a few people on a list, or quite a few groups on a list. Right? Now, what a good next step to do is you're going to think about specific people in each of the groups that you've written down. And maybe you don't know somebody personally in some of the virtual groups, but maybe you've admired what they've posted, or you've commented on what they've posted, or you've made some kind of a connection. You've responded to what they've posted. But what I want you to do is think about specific people in each of these groups and identify those who stand out for you as people who are influencers. So people who you feel influenced by, who you look up to, who are doing something that you admire, something that you would like to be doing, or who think the way you'd like to think, or maybe who are achieving something that you would like to achieve. People whom you feel are influencing you. And again, you might not know them very well, but you might, especially when you get down into the in-person groups and the ones that are your friends and your family. But identify these people, individuals, not just the groups now, but the actual names, and start a list from all the groups. And one of the things to remember is that with virtual technology these days, you don't have to stick to one location. Maybe you know someone who you can add to a list of core contacts who lives in a different town, a different country, but who you know in some way, or someone who's moved away, but you know who they are, right? So who can you add to a list of core contacts? Now, when you're thinking about all of these people, have you had conversations with any of them where they have mentioned frequently other people you don't know, but maybe that you would like to know? Do these people, especially these are the close ones that I'm talking about, the ones that you know, have you heard these people talk about their mentors, their influencers, their inspiration? And would they be willing to make an introduction between who they admire, their mentor, their close friends, their relatives could be, and yourself? So that is, think about that. Think about who, and if so, make a secondary list to address later. Not right now, but in time, make a secondary list. Oh yeah, my brother knows this person who sounds really cool, and I think we'd have something in common, and maybe my brother can connect the two of us via email introduction or something. So think about that. Now comes the hardest, probably the hardest part. Maybe not. This is the part where you make real connection. And so you look at that list of all the individual names from all of those groups that you have written down, and you don't need, 50 names. You might have 15 names, and that's perfect. You might only have 8 names. That's perfect too. Whatever you've mined from all of these groups is where you begin. So you've got this list, and this might have you stepping out of your comfort zone. I don't know. You might be a person who's easy. It's easy to connect with others. You might be one of those people. You might not be. One of the best suggestions I have come across if you are reaching out to someone, especially somebody you don't know well, is to ask them how you could help them as well. Now, you might not want to do that till after you've had a conversation, but if I can do something for you, let me know. What can I do for you? Is a good question. Sometimes when I have a guest on the podcast, that's the question they ask me after we've gone off air, is what can I do for you? And sometimes I've taken them up on it and said, please share this. Well, I always ask them to share it with their networks and share the episode and or to introduce me to somebody or whatever. So it's sort of a reciprocal thing. You're asking these people for something, and it would be great if you could offer something back to them. So for instance, if you're wanting to move into a particular industry and you're just looking for some advice, maybe you're looking for some pointers, you're looking for some ideas, you're looking for ways that person did it that might be ways that you could follow, or maybe there are skills that would be really handy for you to have that aren't listed in the job posting or that you haven't discovered yet. And maybe that person has, hey, this would be an excellent thing for you to brush up on, or for you to learn, or for you to have on your resume, that kind of thing. You're wanting sort of the inside tips and tricks. And so what you can do is you can ask for what we call an informational interview. Now, you might not want to use that terminology, but it's the concept I'm referring to. And you've probably heard me talk about this before. There is a whole podcast episode in our archives. I believe it's episode 150. And that is an episode where Mac Pritchard, who runs Find Your Dream Job podcast, out of Portland, Oregon, I believe. Mac, I got to have a lunch meeting with Mac and his team when I was in, we were in California, in Anaheim, at a podcast conference, and my daughter and I had lunch with the whole Find Your Dream Job podcast job board and podcast team, and we made some collaborations there. They're a lovely bunch of people. Anyway, Mac talks about how exactly to do an informational interview in that episode, but I'll give you the gist of it here if you don't have time to go back and listen to that right now. The idea is that you ask the person you'd like to meet with for a meeting with a finite amount of time. So 30 minutes or so is probably perfect. And you make it easy. You ask if they would hop on a Zoom call or a Skype call, or you might even ask them to talk on the regular telephone. Do we even do that anymore? If you're able to. Or you could ask for a quick in-person coffee on you, of course, that you have to buy at or near their workplace, if you're allowed to meet in person right now, whatever is most convenient to the person that you want to talk to. So it could be in person, it could be on Zoom, or some other technology. And then tell them you're thinking of moving into the industry, or you're looking to move into the industry, and you would really like their opinion about some of what you're thinking. Don't use the phrase picking your brain. That's old. People don't want their brains picked, I don't think. Make it more of a conversation. And ask about their experiences of working in this particular company or industry. Make sure to let them know that it won't take a lot of their time. Again, you will stick to that 30 minutes or maybe 20 minutes, whatever you need. Most people are really more than willing to help out someone else, especially if you're not asking them for anything other than a bit of time and their wisdom. Lots of people are willing to do this, especially if they know you even a little bit and they know that you're not trying to sell them anything. This is the problem that I find sometimes with LinkedIn and some of these platforms that are supposed to be networking. I love LinkedIn. It has a lot of good features, and it's a great platform for many, many things. But I get super frustrated when people want to connect with me and then want to share with me, their $2,000 program to take my business to the next level. It's a pitch, it's a sell, it's, oh, hi, I want to talk to you because we're in the same industry. And then it's, oh, buy my product. And I hate that. So I've actually started telling people I'm not interested. If I'm looking for such a thing, I will seek it out. And so I find that really annoying. But there are some genuine connections that do still happen on LinkedIn, thank heavens. But every once in a while, often I'll get pitched by somebody who just wants to sell me their latest, greatest thing that's gonna, rock my world and make everything fantastic. And there's so much of it, right? So you're not doing that. You're not trying to sell them anything or beg them to put themselves out on the line for you. You just want to have a conversation. So it's low barrier. You want to learn from them a little bit, have a conversation, find out a little bit about what they know, and buy them a coffee if you can. So it's make it low threat, low barrier, and most people will offer their time to you. And then one of the things to do is make sure you honor that time frame. If you've said 30 minutes, don't make it 45 unless they're the ones who push for it. And you can say, I promised you 30 minutes. And they can say, oh, that's okay. I'll happy to talk to you for a few more minutes. Great. But be respectful of their time and stick to what you had said you would do. Because what that does is it both shows the person that you do respect their time and that you do what you say that you follow through on what you say you'll do, right? If I've invited you for 20 minutes, I'm going to stick to 20 minutes, etc. When your conversation with this person is over, I would suggest highly that you send a follow-up thank you, either by email or by real mail, if you have a minute to scratch out a nice card and know where they live or what their work address is and send it to them. Your contact might not have concrete ideas that will help you right away. They may not be able to say, oh, I know somebody who knows somebody who, would be happy to interview you. That would be fabulous, but that may not happen. But what happens is if you've made a real connection and you keep that connection open, something might come up later. It might be in a week, it might be in a month, it might be in 6 months or a year. And that interaction with you might come to mind and they might say, hey, I had that coffee with that person named Jen last year. And she might be really good for this project. So those are the kinds of things you're hoping for. It might not be instantaneous, but that's why you don't just do one. If you've got 15 people on your list, you book 15 of these if you can. If you've got 50 people on your list, book 50 of these, right? So it's the idea is you connect with people and you do it in genuine ways. You have real conversations and it's quality over quantity. Make sure that you're doing it with people that you think will remember you, that you have a real connection with, or that you have a really good connection with the person that they are very well connected with. One of the things that I also don't like, I'm telling you a lot of things I don't like today, are those network events. We don't have them right now during COVID, but these networking events where you go into a great big room and everybody's got a name tag on that says, I'm an expert, which also I find not very humble, but everybody's an expert, right? So they have what they do on their name tag, and then it's almost like speed dating. Where you're running around the room and people are talking to you for, 5 seconds and they want to know what you do. And then when they find out you're probably not going to be able to do anything for them, they zip away to the next group. And it's sort of this whole exhausting experience of people zipping around and having sort of shallow conversations. Anyway, that has been my experience more times than not. When it wasn't like that, I did have a few really solid connections with people that then turned into coffee with those people, that then turned into actual connection and friendship or business relationship, etc. So sometimes it has worked, but it's when I've been pretty intentional about not zipping around to talk to 50,000 people, but having actual, proper, memorable conversations one-to-one with just a few people at these events. I hardly ever go to them anymore because I thought, oh, this is just too much for me. It's overwhelming. I don't like it. And it's usually like an hour drive away in the dark, in the winter, in the rain. Yeah, no, thank you. But sometimes they work, like I said. And in the future, when you do make a move into whatever it is you're moving into, remember the conversations and think about whether or not there are collaborative opportunities there that you could offer the other person as well. And this is true of the informational interviews. Is there something you could offer that person at some point in the future? I know I did have a good conversation once with someone at one of these kinds of events, and kept the business card and actually followed up with it and had coffee with that person several months later. I think we had coffee once or twice, but it was like years apart. And we lost touch and connected once in a while from time to time, but I never forgot that person. That person had a real impact on me. And not very long ago, like just within the last 6 months, someone I know was looking for the very service that person provided. And I thought, these two would be the perfect fit for working together. So I made the connection and the two people met. And lo and behold, they've been working with each other ever since. And they never would have met had I not followed up after having met this person at a networking thing and then had the coffee meetings. So in that case, it was me being helpful to two people I met who I thought would benefit from meeting each other. Nothing to do with me, except I was kind of the matchmaker, right? So you just never know where these things will lead. The thing about maximizing your network is that you have to do the work. And it takes an open mind. It takes a willingness to risk a little bit. It takes some initiative. You can sit back and wait for something to happen if you're in a job search, or you can take control and get strategic and put the steps in place that will make it more likely that you will reach your goal. And the thing is, you probably know far more people than you initially think you do until you sit down and start counting. And the people that the more people you tell about what it is you're doing, now you have to be careful. Maybe you don't want to tip off your workplace that you're looking for a new job. But your personal connections, you might be able to put it out with your friends and family. And the more people you actually tell about your goal and your thinking around what you'd like to be doing next, the more opportunities might arise that you can then choose to follow or not. But if you never tell anyone about what it is you're wanting to do, nothing is actually going to happen, right? Unless by some magical thing. So even in a pandemic, and actually because of the pandemic, the virtual thing is so much more common and so much more comfortable and so much easier. And that's like so many more people know how to hop onto Zoom now. I wish I'd bought stock in it. But so many more people know how to do that than did before last year. Before the beginning of this year, pardon me. And so it's easy and comfortable, and it's a great way for connecting. It's less work than having to drive somewhere to meet someone. It's less time out of that person's busy day. And often it's not hard for them to say yes to you. Although while I say that, if you are allowed to meet in person, which we're just on a new 2-week lockdown right now, but if you are allowed to meet in person, sometimes people are sick of being on their screens, and they really, really would appreciate getting out and sitting in a cafe and seeing somebody in 3D instead of 2D. So see, what works, but be respectful of the time, be honest, be real, and you might just be really surprised at what ensues. So those are my suggestions for how to maximize your network. And if you start thinking about it, you probably have one. And again, it might not be that big. It might be just 5 or 6 people, but my goodness, if you can have a really good connection with 5 or 6 people, those 5 or 6 people will keep you in mind, and they know a lot of people. right? So it's that whole idea of the how many degrees of separation that your dream job may be away from you. It may not be as far as you think when you first start out. All right, my friend, if you want to know more, come on over to the website or the social media sites again. Check out Patreon under the support tab on our Careers by Jen Facebook page. If you're interested in the Huddle Journey app, which is really cool, I know a lot of companies are getting on board, signing up for their employees to be able to do some of this deep transformational work, which is kind of cool. Check out, again, the Instagram link in my bio or the Careers by Jen Facebook page, because the information is there. And otherwise, I look forward to sharing with you again the next time. Be well, stay safe, and be kind. And I look forward to talking to you very soon. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.